Hey Weather Warriors, in this video we're talking about the snowstorm or blizzard that could be tracking up right through the central United States and Midwest around Halloween. I'm going to go over the probability for 1 or more inches of snow, 6 or more inches of snow. We're going to over snowfall amounts towards the end of the video, and I'm also going to walk you through hour by hour as the storm tracks across the United States. And we're also going to go over temperatures and precipitation for the rest of the country with this system. But before we begin, hit that subscribe button if you want detailed forecast breakdown. Hit those bell notifications because we do go live. And comment below, what is the craziest Halloween event that you remember? We'll have a fun discussion in the comments. So let's look at the snow scope index first. We're going to have a little fun with this on the channel. This is essentially the threat for 1 or more inches of snow. We're going to look at 1 or more inches first, and then we'll look at 6 or more inches. And this scale goes from a 1 to 5. So 1 means 1 out of 5 chance, which means 20%. And then a 5 out of 5 is essentially 100%. So we're going to go through this one by one here. Now, this is a 20% chance or greater. Obviously, some areas in here are near 100% chance that they're going to see snow. But this blue area is what, I think there's at least a 20% chance you'll see snow in that area. Now, as we go towards 2 out of 5, okay, about a 40% chance in this dark blue, you can see actually northwest parts of Maine are included in this. So that might sneak over a little bit as it moves to the east. But you can see the rest of really a lot of the western U.S. into the central and midwestern United States, at least a 40% chance of 1 or more inches. This includes Denver, Omaha, Kansas City, Des Moines, Minneapolis, parts of Wisconsin. And then as we go towards 3 out of 5 here, this is roughly about a 50 to 60% chance, and we'll say 60 for here. And you can see it's mostly in the Rockies. And then as you head towards the Midwest, right up Colorado, Nebraska, Iowa, and Wisconsin. And then we've got an even higher chance, a 4 out of 5 chance, so an 80% chance of 1 or more inches of snow within this region. So deep into the Rockies, and then also right up through Omaha, Denver, Des Moines, and right through Madison. So, I mean, this is a pretty high likelihood now, if you live kind of right in this area right here, maybe also out in Colorado, that you're going to see at least an inch. Now, let's look at the probability for 6 inches. So this is what I'm generally thinking for 6 inches. It's a lot smaller, as you can see, but still a 1 out of 5 chance. There's a lot of confidence that this storm is really going to strengthen as it moves to the east. There's a little bit of uncertainty farther west. How fast is this thing going to strengthen? It really starts to gain ground as it goes through Kansas City, and to the northwest of that is where you're going to get your heaviest snow band. So that includes places like Wisconsin, Iowa, and potentially as far west as Nebraska. So a 40% chance of 6 or more inches, 2 out of 5 here, pretty much the same area. And then as we go towards the 40% or the 60% range, I think your highest probability lands in Colorado, Wyoming, and western Nebraska, especially towards the higher elevations out there. And then also another enhanced area here. There seems to be some good confidence. I think you're going to see a good chance for 6 or more inches as you head towards northeast Iowa out into central Wisconsin. And so there's a good chance out there. And there's also a chance for blizzard conditions, as you're about to see here in a second. And then our greatest threat, a 4 out of 5 chance, and 80%, will lie really in the upper elevations and high plains of Colorado and Wisconsin. This thing's going to be kind of strong as it heads over here. It might, change a little bit and then reorganize as it goes right up the Midwest. So blizzard potential here, the blizzometer index, having a little fun again. This is the probability of blizzard conditions, okay? So, again, same scale here. I'm thinking a 1 out of 5 chance for kind of the Rockies area. There could be a nice front that moves through, brings very brief blowing snow in that area. It won't last that long, but a brief chance for maybe marginal blizzard conditions. Again, 1 out of 5 chance, only a 20%. And then also out here, there's a heightened risk, as you can see from Nebraska, Iowa, down to Wisconsin, Minnesota, parts of Michigan. Again, only a 20% chance, but it is elevated. And then as you head towards Iowa and Wisconsin, this is the best area where you have about a 40 to a 60%, especially as you head right towards, Madison area. And that would be your highest threat within this region right here. So closing in on is about a 50 or 60% in that region. So that's where I think the best blizzard conditions will be. Now, I'm going to walk you through this hour by hour. We're going to look at the upper levels, then we're going to look at the precipitation, and then we'll look at snowfall amounts. And the amounts are quite surprising for some areas. We're talking this could be really big if you have leaves on the tree. So, and you can see this wave comes down. Now, the big difference between this run and the previous run is we've got a closed wave. You can see the height lines are closed off now, and that indicates a much stronger low pressure system. You're going to get more of an organized comma head type of storm that goes across the Central Plains into the Midwest, and you can see it really, that energy really strengthens. This looks very impressive now, and that's why I have this area under the best chance for precipitation. Really, if you look at these waves, it's been pretty consistent with this wave being strong as it heads towards this area. The biggest uncertainty is as you head from around, I would say, eastern Nebraska out through about Colorado. All right, guys, now we're going to look at the precipitation, kind of the future track of this storm. And we're going to start really around Tuesday here, Monday night at 7 p.m. here. And you can see that there's a first wave that comes through. This thing is a distraction. It's not the main show, but you could see a wave of snow that tracks up kind of a similar track to the main snowstorm. And this could dump, an inch or two of snow, but the main show is sitting right out here. See this high pressure starting to strengthen, swirl around, build. That's going to sink this cold air south. Now, this initial storm has actually dragged some cold air down, so that by the time the second storm comes, that there's a lot of cold air already with it. So it's actually helped drag some cold air down. And that's really what's setting the stage for an early big snowstorm for the central United States. Now, as we head towards Tuesday afternoon, around 1 p.m., Tuesday evening, around 7 p.m., you can see this low pressure system starting to build here. There's a high coming down, and a low's kind of forming here as a response, and you can see these thickness gradients, these dashed lines. They're starting to converge, and you can see just tons of this. So there's a very strong pressure gradient. There is going to be a very cold air Arctic outbreak that does come down here behind this system, and you can see this is setting the stage, and you get your low pressure system right along that gradient. So this is going to track into the plains as we head towards Wednesday the 30th. And you can see around 1 p.m. on Wednesday, this storm system's really starting to get going. The low pressure system isn't overly organized yet here. It's just a long gradient of temperature. So just a baroclinic zone, really just in this area. And that's when that upper level wave wasn't quite closed off. It'll close off. Once it closes off, that's when this thing will get going, and it happened just around as it passed Kansas City. So as you watch this low pressure system pass Kansas City, it'll really start to strengthen. So this is Thursday. Now this is Halloween at 1 a.m., and you can start to see some organization here. You can see this low is now actually closing off at the surface. You got a nice cold front right behind it, very stiff northwest winds, and now you're starting to see a classic snowstorm pulled together. You can see a nice conveyor belt of moisture coming in from the east, moisture coming out from the southwest right along that front, and some of that moisture is getting wrapped around behind the freezing line here, about that 540 line right there. And you can see some of that moisture gets plowed into Nebraska and Iowa and Wisconsin, and it's going to deliver some moderate to heavy wet snow as we head towards Halloween. This is around 6 a.m. This will start to track out. There's actually a cold air, like a closed off cold air mass. So this storm is actually generating some of its own cold air mass, and it could be stiffly cold here. You could get some powdery snow where you do get some of that to close off. We'll see what happens. But you look at this low pressure, and you can see that wrapping now of those temperature gradients really strong as we head towards Halloween at 7 p.m. Probably some thunderstorms as we head towards the Carolinas, Alabama, Louisiana, and Tennessee. We'll look at that in a second. Lots of moisture as you head towards that warm front. Near and north of that warm front, you're going to get a widespread area of rain, but you can see the backside here. These isobars are tightly packed together, could be indicative of borderline blizzard conditions, at least some blowing and drifting snow. You can see that pink area right there indicating very heavy snow, kind of a purple area, but maybe some 1 to 2 inch hour rates. That typically happens just north of the rain to snow line. That's where your best lift typically is. Your mid-level lift at 700 millibars, typically the strongest, kind of right in that region right there. So right where you get that transition zone, if you can get it lined up perfectly, you could have a very strong area of snow, 1 to 2 inch per hour rates. And that's why I had this area of Wisconsin highlighted in the heaviest batch of snow. There could be some thunder snow the way this looks as well in that area. We'll have to watch that. Those are details we would talk about on the day of. And then as you head towards 1 a.m. on Halloween, you can see this thing really gets cranking. 980 millibars, borderline blizzard conditions, very heavy snow right out ahead of that rain to snow line as you head towards the Great Lakes and just north of there into Canada. Lots of copious rain coming out here for the northeastern United States. So this is a classic Midwestern snowstorm. And then as you head towards Friday the 1st at 1 p.m., it tracks well into Canada. And then it starts, as these storms weaken, usually the snow starts to kind of spread out. It's like a top. It'll circulate and then it'll spread out as it weakens. It's kind of crazy there, but yeah. So you might get some wraparound snow towards the Great Lakes as you head again towards, Friday night into Saturday, the 2nd. You might get some bonus snow that comes back, and maybe as far north as Maine as well. So you might get some bonus snow into Maine on Saturday. We'll have to watch that. You can see some flurries actually out here in parts of New York. So behind this system, it's going to be a very sharp area of cold air. So how much are amounts? We'll look at that real quick. The first model we're going to look at here is the GEFS. This is several runs of the GFS. So you take several different members of the GFS. They change up the physics properties just a little bit to account for errors because anything can happen. And then they kind of blend it out and average it out. So it's a safer bet kind of farther in advance. And you can see that the GFS, really all areas here in this blue area, 2 inches plus. So, good bet for 2 inches or more precipitation in this area. This is only one model, and this is a model. We're not throwing every factor in here. But how about the 4-inch, 5-inch, 6-inch amounts? Those are going to kind of be out here in this region right here. Now, you can see I kind of disagree with the GFS. I think there's going to be much higher probability out here. And I've been saying that even since the forecast a few days ago, that I thought that the best area would be kind of lining up in this region right here. It's going to be a class when those upper levels close off. I think that's where you're going to get your best area. The GEFS typically has issues with mesoscale banding. It doesn't account for that thunder snow and that kind of transition zone that I talked about. It doesn't handle that as well. I really think there's going to be some interesting shenanigans that happen kind of in Wisconsin and in Iowa where you get that transition zone where we have locally higher amounts. So that area might be a little bit underestimated. Now, you look at this area right here, and it's forecasting good 6 to 10 inches. So GEFS is really forecasting a crazy storm here for Halloween. Now, if you go kind of below this line right here, there are leaves on the trees still, especially as you head towards Kansas City here. If this thing tracks any farther south, you're talking about a damaging snowstorm. There's not a whole lot of leaves, but there are still leaves. So, oak trees, typically the last leaves to fall off. And so oak trees, but they're typically strong trees. So that's the pros there, but there could be some damage if this snow does materialize in this region. And if it's heavy, there's going to be a wet, heavy snow. And then on the backside, there's going to be some wind. So I would say, especially, out here in this area, you got to watch out for some tree damage potentially. Again, oak trees, usually the last trees, and they're usually pretty durable. So that's the good news. Then you usually track out to the Midwest. This is the GFS still, GFS. You can see that 2 to 6 inch range out there. Again, I think this area is going to be much higher than what the GFS shows with the 700 millibar, the mid-level lift. And I think you're going to have a very strong pocket of heavy snow somewhere in that region. Now, if you look at this is the members. So this is the GEFS. And we're looking at all the different runs with slight different initial conditions and physics packages. And you can see all of these different runs. Some areas peg, some areas, and then some areas there's no storms at all. But this is an average, so it's taken all of these members here and it's averaging them out, and that's kind of what you get right there. So that's just kind of a cool little feature, and you can find those on weather.com. How about the GFS? This is one member of the GEFS, and it's the best member typically. Okay, it's, but again, it's only one member. So I like to usually use those ensembles, but you can see you're talking 6 to 15 inches in this area. It's got some of Iowa in the 15 to 16 inch range. So astronomical for early fall with leaves still on the tree. And it's got Kansas City almost in the brunt of this thing. Any slight shift to the south, and look out. But the GFS, I think the Euro is a little bit farther north. So I think this will line up just a tad farther north than what this says, but that is very concerning. And then you look at the GEM computer model. It's got this a lot farther south, a lot weaker, but you can see it really strengthens the low pressure system as it gets to the east. Again, more confidence exists as you head kind of out in this direction, a little bit farther north than what the GEM's saying. But how about the GFS for the Midwestern region? And you can see a very good swath of 6 to 12 inches. And then the GEM, a little bit less, a little bit farther south as well. Now, the European computer model we can't show on here, but it's kind of right in between everything. And it's been very consistent. The European computer model has been very consistent. So I'm beginning to think that that's probably going to be the best picture. So you essentially take the GFS and you move it, probably just... it's really, the track's pretty much the same, but you probably take off just a couple inches of snow within that region. These models like to overestimate, especially as you head, when you go over 12 inches or so in this time frame. It seems like there's a lot of overestimation. So, I'm not going to say that you're not going to get 16 inches, but probably somewhere in there, you're going to have a few isolated 8 to 12 inch amounts. And that's why I highlighted that area for the 6+ inch range, at 60% or greater. So that's going to kind of do it with that. We're going to look at one more thing here. We're going to look at the winds, and then maybe the temperatures. Let's look at the winds real quick. We'll zoom into where that low pressure system really gets cranking. When you get a deepening low, you'll get winds often because of that response of those isobars, and you can see it. This is going to be Halloween at 7 p.m. and you can see those winds start to cranking. And again, the snow's actually going to be farther north, so you got about 15 to 25 miles an hour, so that's enough to whip things around, especially if you have heavy wet snow on power lines and trees. And then as you head towards, around 1 p.m. on Halloween, you can see that kind of increases, maybe 20 to maybe as much as 30 miles an hour in some areas. But like I said, Wisconsin, right where you have that overlap of wind and snow, that's where your best chance for a blizzard is going to be. Like I said, I only have this area around about 2 to 3 out of 5, so about a 40 to 60%. I'd say about a 50-50 shot for this area right here at the moment. It's really borderline, but nonetheless, there'll be some breezes for sure. And then how about temperatures with this thing? If you look at the temperatures behind this storm, it's pretty crazy what's going to go on next week across the United States. This usually doesn't happen till December, and it's already happening in early October, late October, early November. You can see as we head towards Halloween, let's go the night after, or the night of Halloween. How about the morning of Halloween? That looks like the coldest, and you can see negative temperatures here in the Rockies, right where that high pressure center is. -20 in upper elevations. Might be a little overdone, but it's been pretty consistent with some very cold air. And surprisingly, the GFS is starting to look more like what the GEM had, the Canadian, earlier this week. So with the very cold air out in the western United States, that's very interesting that the GEM actually did pretty well with this. And then you look at the 32-degree line, this blue here. It's all the way into Texas. 20s for much of the northern plains. And the next day, you go towards Halloween, the morning after Halloween, 20s, all the way out into the East Coast, teens in the Rockies. So really cold behind this thing. Very high confidence that you're going to get very cold air, potentially record-setting in some of these areas after Halloween. It's been very consistent with that. We're talking, I've been forecasting this for about a month or so, that right around the last week of October, you'd see a big cold blast especially in the central and eastern United States. A little bit further west than what I was thinking, in early October, but pretty close overall. So that's going to wrap it up for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you like these videos, hit those thumbs up button, the thumbs up button at the bottom of the video. Hit that subscribe button. Hit those bell notifications because we do go live. Check out my winter forecast. I'm going to be releasing an update soon. And again, comment below what's the craziest Halloween weather event you remember. So hope you have a great day. Stay safe and have a good one.